Hello there and welcome to Good Morning Transfers. Less than 2 weeks remain then in the transfer window and so much can happen between now and the deadline on the 2nd of February. Today we're joined by former Derby, Newcastle, Burnley midfielder Jeff Hendrick along with our reporter Daniel Kahn. Manchester City have their man Mark Guehi in and he can't wait to get started.
For me, I've always just been obsessed with getting better and wanting to improve. That's something that I'm constantly striving for.
The pressure mounts on Thomas Frank. Will he get new players in to help turn their form around? Lucas Paquetá wants to return to Brazil, but as of yet, Flamengo are yet to offer West Ham what they want. Plus, he's been left out of first-team activities at Chelsea. Will Raheem Sterling's time at the club finally be coming to an end this month? We've got an update on him and Chelsea's search for a centre-back to come. Welcome along then. We start with the breaking news coming out of Bournemouth, who have confirmed the signing of midfielder Alex Tort from Ferencváros. Dan, what can you tell us about this deal?
What a way to start the show. First of all, that's what we love, isn't it, for Good Morning Transfer, starting with a brand new one. And as you mentioned, that Alex Tort joining Bournemouth. And we can tell you the fee is just over £10 million, with just over £2 million in terms of bonuses. And Ferencváros will have a 10% sell-on in case he ever does leave Bournemouth in the future. But of course, he's 20 years old. He works under someone you know very well, Robbie Keane, out in Hungary. And he is someone who is of subject of much interest across Europe. The likes of Lazio, Benfica, Galatasaray were all courting him throughout this window. But ultimately, and I think what a lot of Bournemouth fans will really appreciate is he chose Bournemouth, is what we understand from all of these clubs. Now, he is 20 years old, but he is someone who has Europa League experience, which I think, again, will help his adaptation to the Premier League. I think how Bournemouth potentially see him moving forward is going to be a box-to-box midfielder who can also play as a deep-line creator as well as going forward, but really in competition with the likes of Tyler Adams, Ryan Christie, in terms of that roaming box-to-box type role.
Yeah, and there are no secrets on this show. Jeffrey, you've been speaking to Robbie Keane about this, and Robbie says he's a fantastic player. Bournemouth are getting a hell of a signing here.
Yeah, it was interesting talking to Robbie. It shows football, and he went into the club. He was supposed to go on loan. And then after 2 days, Robbie saw something in the player he really liked. He did say he's a bit like a young Jeff, box to box. But
that is true. I can't confirm that. I heard that part.
But he couldn't speak highly enough of the young lad, and thinks he's going to have a bright future. Maybe he won't go straight into the starting team, but the way he spoke about him and how much he liked him. It was clear to see that he's obviously a good player and Robbie knows his stuff. Do
you think he slots straight into this Bournemouth team? Interesting seeing their team last night in the game against Brighton in the Premier League. They had Alex Scott in there, didn't they, and Smith. But they've got Tyler Adams, they've got Ryan Christie. I wonder, Jeff, whether he's just ready to go now.
Yeah, he might be. Sometimes, a club will think, all right, we'll give him a bit of bedding in time, we'll give him a few weeks to know the squad, get to know the players, the way the manager wants to work. But I think potentially after hearing Robbie talk about him, he'll be hungry and ready to go in and fight for his place. And Bournemouth are a really good side, but I think any player getting brought in is going to back themselves.
Still a massive step up, though, isn't it, to come from the Hungarian league? Albeit, they've been competing right at the top. They're a point off the top. Robbie says he's got great pedigree, but this is the Premier League, Jeff.
Of course, yeah, but I think it does help when you go into a squad maybe with better players who are playing in the Premier League and doing well, so they will help him bed in, and if he gets to then shine and show his qualities, like I said, he could step into it.
And just on that point, I mean, it's a great point, because he'll have the likes of Ryan Christie, Lewis Cook, who can show him the fundamentals of working in that position. I also think what it does for Bournemouth, it allows someone like Alex Scott to play a bit further forward. So I think for Tort, I mean, as you mentioned, he's 20 years old, but maybe compared to a few other signings we've seen in the Premier League over the last few years, they maybe come without playing a lot of football, but under Robbie Keane, he's played the second most amount of games. So that just shows you how much he trusts him. But at least he has played a lot of football. He's played in the Europa League. He's also played some big games for Hungary as well at international level. So, look, is he going to play right away, as you mentioned, Jeff? Probably not. It's going to take some time to adapt. But undoubtedly, they have someone for the future. And I think, with Ryan Christie managing a bit of a knee injury over the last 12 months, Tyler Adams recovering from injury in the next month as well, I think is a great option in that midfield.
And the Bournemouth fans watching this morning, Dan, will be hoping that Tort's not the only incoming at the Vitality this month.
Absolutely. First of all, they're looking at a potential new goalkeeper in Christos Mandas from Lazio. Now, he hasn't played all that much football. He's played in the Italian Cup. But I think they want more competition for Georgi Petrovic. We saw him start last night. Bit unlucky considering an overhead kick, what a goal that was. But I think they maybe want to evaluate that position. We've seen Bournemouth in the last few years play around with that a little bit with Neto, with Kepa, with Petrovic, and now they might have another goalkeeper to add to the fray.
And in terms of Antoine Semenyo's replacement, they must have known, obviously with this clause in Semenyo's contract, that this could happen very early in the window. What about a replacement for him? Because that's essential, isn't it, in terms of that creativity that they're going to be missing?
Absolutely, and we're still waiting to see where this potential deal could go. But over the weekend, they did submit an offer for Vasco da Gama winger Ryan, a bid around £27 million. Now, I think there's still talks going on around how that deal could look, the structure of such a deal. But it looks like Bournemouth, of course, will look for that replacement for someone like Antoine Semenyo. I mean, Andoni Areola spoke about it before the game, that they knew this was going to happen coming into the window. They tried to get Semenyo to play as much football as he could before he left, as we saw against Tottenham. But now it's about reinforcing that squad, and Ryan could be someone that they look to do that with.
That's a big hole, Semenyo, to fill, isn't it?
Yeah, I think everyone really rates him highly, and you see the goals and assists he brings to the team, and just his influence. He's a ball carrier. He can make things happen. He can win games. So to lose a player like that it's difficult to take. And like you said, they do need to replace him, and it's going to be hard.
Yeah, I just wonder on that point. It's very interesting because you see the Bournemouth-Brighton game last night. You see Brighton sprinkled with quite a lot of experienced players, likes of Danny Welbeck. They brought back Pascal Gross, James Milner. I just wondered, do you think that Bournemouth team? I know they have Ryan Christie, Lewis Cook. Do you think they maybe need a bit more experience? Because all these players we're talking about, they're all still quite young, 19, 20 years old, 20-year-olds. Do you think they need a bit more experience in that team?
Yeah, it's tricky when I actually talk openly about this. A lot of clubs go down the route of young players where potentially they'll make money in a few years' time and all, but I think every club does need experience, and I think that calmness it will bring to the young players, help them learn, and it gets overlooked a little bit right now.
Let me bring you some quotes, actually, from Bournemouth's new signing, Alex Tort, who says, "It feels amazing to be part of this club and excited to achieve good things. When I knew AFC Bournemouth were first interested in me, I was excited and happy because this is a good club in the Premier League, the best league in the world and the strongest league." I want to talk to you guys as well, Dan, about developments coming out of Arsenal this morning. Marseille in talks with Arsenal over the loan signing of Ethan Nwaneri. Understood to be a number of clubs wanting to sign him. He's been fantastic, but obviously this season Arsenal have so much strength in depth, don't they? And this could be a move that works for both parties on loan.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Nwaneri has been, after what was a breakthrough season last year, I mean, he was so impressive. He played so much football for Mikel Arteta, but with the reinforcements of the likes of Noni Madueke, Ebereeze, even Leandro Trossard being preferred at the start of the season on the left, he has found game time really limited, especially with Martin Odegaard being fit this season as well. Only 4 starts this season, but none in the Premier League. So I think that shows how much he needs to play football at just 18 years old. Marseille, of course, led by former Brighton manager Roberto De Zerbi. I think Arsenal very much would be attracted to how Marseille play football and their style of football. So that makes that a lot more attractive. And again, I think we probably need to reinforce this would be potentially a straight loan if this deal goes. There's no option or anything like that. Arsenal still very committed to Nwaneri, but just maybe want him to get a bit more experience.
Yeah, he's a young lad there. The club obviously love him, but they need to get him game time. The main thing for young players is to play and learn. You learn on the job pretty much in football, and if you're not getting them minutes in weekly, he's sort of standing still a little bit. So if you can go out and play, like you said, under De Zerbi, who seems to be a great manager, coach, it seems a perfect move if you can get game time.
I wonder on that point though, if you're him, Jeff, do you almost want to stay amongst the squad, even if you're not playing too much, to see what a title race would be like, that experience, Because if Arsenal do it, it would be an incredible achievement. And do you want to be part of that, or is it more important 18 to be playing football?
Yeah, it's probably a bit of both. Obviously, they're going for the league. They're having such a good season. But then he's got to look selfishly a little bit and try and progress his own career. And I think going on loan is the right thing. Obviously, be in touch with the players, the manager, everything, and they will make him still feel part of it. But like you said, 4 games this season isn't enough. And if they do go on and win titles and you've only played 4 games, do you really feel part of it? I don't think so, yeah.
Would you want to keep him in the Premier League, though? It's all well and good going to Marseille, but if you were Mikel Arteta, would you not want him to have those Premier League miles on the clock to see what he can do?
Possibly, but then, you know, you're loaning him out to rivals or teams who could... I think sending him abroad is probably the better scenario. He's out of the way of the league. He can go and just concentrate on playing, and I think that's the main thing.
Yeah. Right, meanwhile, it has been a tough few weeks, hasn't it, for Thomas Frank at Tottenham Hotspur. Frank insists that he feels the support of the Tottenham board despite mounting pressure on his job as head coach.
I haven't heard any situation like that in football where I say, hey, mate, if you win tomorrow, no problem. If you lose tomorrow, no problem. We had a good conversation about life and football, the future of the club, everything normal like you do. Of course, there's a little bit, how can you say, stormy weather out there. I just think it's an extremely good sign because normally people are running away if there's bad news or bad weather coming. They're normally not coming in and being friendly for lunch.
No win in 5 games. Thomas Frank, Jeff, saying that, you know, he's had lunch with the powers that be yesterday. Everything's fine behind the scenes. They're playing Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League tonight at home, which is a massive game. And actually, you know, they've still got a great chance of making the top 8 places in the Champions League. It's the Premier League where there's been big concerns. How much heat do you think there is on Thomas Frank that he's not letting us onto there?
Unfortunately, I think there's a lot. The fans don't seem happy. The results haven't been good enough. Yeah, he might get into the top 8 in the Champions League and I might save him for a couple of weeks or whatever it is, but I just think unfortunately the mind of the fans is being made up. The results haven't gone well enough. And
what do you think hasn't worked with him style-wise? Why is it not a good fit, which is what people are saying stylistically?
Well, I thought at the start of the season, he's going to do really well. He's done brilliant at Brentford. The players they brought in are potentially injured or they just haven't done what they expected to do. I don't know, is his style of play maybe a little bit too negative for the fans to cheer on? But ultimately it's results game and he hasn't been getting enough results, especially at home.
Yeah, Conor Gallagher's a big signing. Any more likely to come in before the end of the window, Spurs?
Like, it's really difficult if you're the Tottenham hierarchy, isn't it? Because they invested quite heavily in the summer, the likes of turning Mateus Tell's loan into a permanent, for example, but he's struggling to really play all that much football. He's just been replaced in the Champions League squad by Dominic Solanke. They've obviously signed Mohamed Kudus, but he's now injured. Richarlison, another attacking option, is injured for the next 5-6 weeks as well. So that is where they're lacking. Dejan Kulusevski, James Maddison. I know Tottenham fans are probably sick of hearing about an extended injury list. Ben Davies, the latest to be onto that.
Injuries are just a part of football.
Absolutely.
Like every club gets them, so you can't really use it as an excuse.
No, for sure. And I think really, talk about results, it really is the performances at home, especially. I mean, it wasn't too long ago where they played PSG, where he was being praised about his tactics and pragmatic approach. I think the issue is week to week, they haven't seen enough against teams that aren't the big teams to really have a go.
Yeah, you saw that list there. And it's commonplace in football, but that is an extraordinary list and they're lacking so much creativity. And the latest one that you mentioned, Ben Davies, will they have to accelerate this move for Sousa? How close is it? There were talks that he was in the dressing room after the West Ham defeat, that he could slot straight in there. And everyone who's seen him from a Brazilian point of view at Santos has a lot to say about this guy. Absolutely,
and they're still finalising this deal, it seems, for Sousa, even though maybe is the worst kept secret at the moment in the transfer window. So they're still working on getting that deal over the line. He, of course, won't be involved in the Champions League this week. At least they do have Destiny Udogie, who's now fit, Jed Spence, who was on the bench on the weekend. So they do have kind of options there. I think for maybe Thomas Frank, the issues are the fact he only has 11 outfield players available for midweek, and his attacking options are incredibly limited.
Jeff, what insight can you give us then in terms of if a manager is absolutely up against it, and as Thomas Frank we believe is, in terms of recruitment, and I know it works differently at clubs like Burnley compared to people who've got 4 or 5 on the recruitment team, but there must be a bit of a pause on sort of signings if you're potentially not sure about the manager.
Yeah, there is a big difference in probably the lower teams to the big teams. The big teams, no matter, I think, with who the manager's going to be, or if potentially new managers coming in, they have a team of people who pretty much make the signings. Yeah, it will be ran by the manager, but sometimes it's not the manager signing you. Like I go back to when I signed at Newcastle, it wasn't necessarily the manager; it was higher than him and above him. So. If they have people on a list, I'm sure they will be fighting to get them players in, regardless of if Frank stays or not.
Yeah. Right, still to come on Good Morning Transfers. Chelsea are after a centre-back and they might even go in for a midfielder this month as well. Plus, Nuno Espirito Santo could sign 3 more players this month, but could one key playmaker be about to leave the London Stadium? We'll talk that next. Welcome back to Good Morning Transfers. Lucas Paquetá, the West Ham midfielder, his future remains up in the air and it is a huge topic of debate this January. Dan Kahn, will he stay or will he go?
Well, look, the latest information we have is that Flamengo, the Brazilian side, remain interested in trying to sign Lucas Paquetá in this window. Now, we also understand that there's been no contact between the two clubs in the last week or so. So it kind of leaves West Ham, Paquetá, Flamengo all in a very strange position. Someone has to act, whether that's from the player perspective, whether that's Flamengo actually putting a bid in. Now, we've been adamant throughout this window, from our understanding, West Ham do not want him to leave this window. But of course, he didn't play on the weekend and they beat Tottenham. So what I also mentioned yesterday was we haven't seen the same Lucas Paquetá from the last few years, where before he almost joined Manchester City, he was playing at an unreal level. We've not really seen that type of Paquetá, have we?
Yeah, and like you said, they won without him. He's made he's talked about he wants to go. He wants to go back home. So for the club, who I think we talked about it last week, you know, if they are in a fight really to stay up, and a player doesn't want to be there.
What's that like as his teammate in that scenario?
Yeah, of course, the lads will still be friendly with him and still go to work and have a laugh or whatever. I don't know what type of guy he's like. He might be quiet and distancing himself from the group, but if he doesn't want to be there and you need all men on board to fight for to stay in the league, really, you want to make a deal and shake hands and just go separate ways.
But the
really.
frustrating side of all of this from the West Ham fans is because there is no doubting his talent when he wants to play and when he wants to show it, is there? I mean, hence why Manchester City were interested in the first place.
Well, that's it. And since he didn't get his move to Man City, has he showed the talents that made City want him? And if he's not shown that, maybe the fans might be a bit more accepting of him going.
Yeah, and a big year for him. It's a World Cup year. I mean, the guy's been starting for Brazil, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think we have to also not forget that he feels he's gone through such a difficult period, of course, you know, with this FA charge that was looming over him that he was now cleared of. And, you know, it makes sense maybe sometimes we don't really talk about the personal side of a footballer's life, that maybe he just wants to go home, maybe he just wants to feel a bit more comfortable after whatever he's had to live through over the last 18 months or so. But I think for West Ham, they're in such a precarious position in the league table. What message does it send to the rest of his teammates, as you mentioned? But the best thing, I think, for Nuno Espirito Santo is they saw their side win without Paquetá on the weekend, and that can only do that squad a world of good if in the situation he was to leave.
Last time we talked to you, Jeffrey, about your old friend, your old teammate, your old friend, he's still your friend, Callum Wilson, with your days at Newcastle together. I think you were saying, look, he's still got massive incentive to join the 100 club. He's only 7 off now after scoring that really important goal for West Ham off the bench late against Tottenham. You've been sliding into his DMs, into his WhatsApps. What's he doing, Jeff? Is he staying at West Ham?
I haven't, unfortunately. I probably should have, yeah. But no, like I said, he wants to get to that 100 club. He's hungry to stay in the Premier League, and it'll be something his kids will be proud of. He'll be proud of as well. So for him to stay at West Ham would be great. He probably just needs more minutes. You see, he came on the other day. It was his chance that led to the corner, and then he seems to be in the right place, and he's always sniffing out a goal opportunity.
I think also there's now a place for him in this squad. I think in the start of the window where it seemed more likely he could leave, when Tati Castellanos, Pablo signed, it seemed, maybe if they only play with one forward, he won't have a place in that squad. But actually on the weekend against Tottenham, Pablo played as the 10, Tati Castellanos played as the 9. And with Paquetá not in that squad, there was a position for Wilson to make a huge impact on the bench or even rotate in and start. So it looks like there could be a gap.
West Ham to keeping, not necessarily just because of that goal, but Nuno was quite adamant, wasn't he? When Castellanos came in, he said, I've had a chat with Callum.
Absolutely.
And he knows how the land lies.
Absolutely, but it seems there's been a shift from that position where West Ham are actually quite keen on continuing with Callum Wilson for as long as he's willing. But I think for Wilson himself, he'll also have a decision to make. That does he feel he can get to that 100 club at West Ham? Because let's not get it wrong, there'll be other Premier League teams who think that Callum Wilson can do a job for them and score vital goals. And I think you look in the second half of the table, bottom half, there are quite a few teams there who probably feel like they need a few more goal scorers and goals in their teams.
So Jeff, that's his incentive, and quite rightly, because it's a huge achievement, isn't it, to rack up a ton of goals in the Premier League. But I'm thinking slightly longer term as well, even to next season. Where do you think he sees his future, Callum Wilson? Still in the Premier League as a striker?
Yeah. Maybe he's getting to the age, and with the injuries he's had, he might not be a player who starts every game or starts most games pretty much, but to have someone like him who knows how to score goals in the Premier League coming off the bench in most of your games is a good bit of firepower to have. So there will be teams always interested in him, and I suppose it's what suits him and where he thinks he can get to the 100 club. Pretty much.
We need to get Jeff's phone out of there because we've had intel from Robbie Keane coming in, voice notes flying all over there. We've got intel on Callum Wilson. What about your old club, Burnley, and James Ward-Prowse? Firstly, Dan, is this a deal that could be done as a loan in January for Scott Parker?
Yeah, so Burnley are definitely interested in signing James Ward-Prowse, and that would most likely be a loan. Now, they're also looking for a replacement for Josh Cullen, who injured his ACL a few weeks ago. He's now injured for the rest of the season, and he was also the captain, so a lot of experience, a lot of leadership lost in that midfield area. Nuno Espirito Santo has been quite adamant, whether that was at Nottingham Forest previously and now at West Ham, that Ward-Prowse is, West Ham are willing to let him move on. Now, Burnley, I think that would be a great move for them, more experience as they fight relegation. Nuno Espirito Santo doesn't seem to fancy him for the second time, though.
Jeff, can you put some meat on the bones here? I just don't understand. The James Ward-Prowse that I've interviewed over the last decade or so, he's a leader, doesn't look like a disruptor to me. Is this just purely Nuno and him not having each other, or how do you read this situation? For me, you look at that West Ham team and they could do with those free kicks, they could do with that creativity, that being able to hit a dead ball, a moving ball, the crosses that he provides. I don't understand it, Jeff.
Yeah, I think I'm there with you a little bit. I don't understand it. People I know who've been at Southampton with him and all talk about how much of a nice lad he is. He's a good lad. He works hard. Like you said, he doesn't disrupt or anything. He's technically brilliant. Probably one of the best dead ball set play takers in the league. So I think it's just unfortunate that him and the manager, he probably isn't the right fit, and that's just looking at his size maybe. And sometimes football is down to that. He's not the right size or build for a manager to suit his style of play. So moving on. He's
the right size to smash in a free kick from 40 yards, isn't he?
Yeah, but then you think 89 other minutes of the game, if he's not big enough, he might not be physical enough for the manager, which is, I don't think size sort of matters. So potentially if you talk about Burnley and Scott Parker taking him in, I played against Scott, he wasn't the biggest player, but he could run all day, he was physical, and he will probably look at it and say, I had that sort of build, it doesn't bother me bringing players in, and it is quite the same build as Josh Cullen, who a lot of the football at Burnley goes through him and his awareness of the game. So
maybe I'm missing something here completely. We talked about Callum Wilson. Callum Wilson, I know he doesn't start much at the London Stadium, but Callum Wilson, his dream is someone like Ward-Prowse. Those two into the team. You talk about goal involvements. They've got two lurking around.
They do have other players, to be fair, that can put in a good ball. Jared Bowen, for example. Lucas Paqueta, if he does stay, can hit a ball pretty sweetly from set pieces. I think, having covered Nuno Espirito Santo quite a lot when he took over Nottingham Forest and that kind of evolution that he really developed within that squad, he does appreciate dynamism in his squad. He wants physicality. He wants, high energy. And those attributes might not just be something that he associates with James Ward-Prowse at this moment. I mean, there is huge pressure on Nuno Espirito Santo at this point. By no means am I part of a fan club of him, but he's trying to keep West Ham up, so he has to make tough decisions like any other manager has to as well. What I really feel for James Ward-Prowse is, since he's left Southampton, it just feels like he's not really found a home, really, since they were relegated. I mean, he joined West Ham, he then went on loan to Nottingham Forest, didn't play much football there, has come back to West Ham, as we were talking about off air, started a little bit under Graham Potter, but now is back out the team. And
a penny
you
for
just
his
feel
thoughts when he saw Nuno get the West
Ham.
Yeah,
but you just feel from a pure, person, footballing point of view, that great football, as you mentioned, with great attributes, just isn't playing all that much.
What about some other potential incomings at West Ham? And again, this is interesting because Nuno has come out and said, look, I'm the one who's making these signings, Tati Castellanos, and we know the connection with Jorge Mendes there as well. They've already had one defender by the name of Cresswell. They could have another one, couldn't they? Yeah,
absolutely. They're quite interested and remain interested in Toulouse's Charlie Cresswell. Now, Wolfsburg have been very interested in him in this window to sign the centre-back, but the French club have been adamant they're not going to listen to offers below £22 million. Now, look, he was highly rated at Leeds. He took a plunge to go abroad and play his football, and our colleague Tim Thornton did a feature with him 6 months ago or so to see how he was getting on. He's absolutely loved it. He's developed so much. and he's someone I think who will have several options in this window, perhaps even more so in the summer. So one to look out for. Also just West Ham in talks signed Kelber Lamadrid from Venezuelan side Deportivo La Guera. Talks on going around a loan move with an option to buy. There's not much insight I can tell you about this Venezuelan side or him. I've not watched before.
There you go. But there we go. West Ham going for it in the transfer window, that is for sure. On the way, Crystal Palace. They lose Mark Guehi. Who will replace him at Selhurst Park? We'll discuss that and whether Manchester City are done spending in this window. See you in a few minutes. £6 million rated centre-back Jeremy Jacquet from Rennes. As for outgoings, at Stamford Bridge, according to Sky in Italy, Napoli see Raheem Sterling as a possible loan option in this window. Juventus prepared to pay up to £26 million to sign Jean-Philippe Mateta from Crystal Palace. Bournemouth have this morning completed the signing of midfielder Alex Tort from Ferencváros for £10.4 million. Bournemouth have submitted an offer as well for Vasco da Gama winger Ryan, worth around £27.5 million. Arsenal's left-back Alexander Zinchenko is closing in on a loan move to Ajax after his Nottingham Forest loan was terminated. Burnley are interested in West Ham midfielder James Ward-Prowse. And Besiktas have asked for time to find a replacement before progressing talks with that man, Aston Villa want to buy Tammy Abraham in this window as well. Don't forget, you can keep across all of the latest information as it happens on our dedicated Transfer Centre blog. Just scan the QR code on the screen right now. Right, let's talk about Chelsea, shall we, guys? Because it has been a pretty quiet window, Dan, by their standards. Is that all about to change?
Well, what they want in this window is a centre-back who can step right into their starting 11. Of course, Levi Corwell injured essentially for the rest of the season. And Tosin also looked like he picked up a hamstring injury on the weekend as well. We'll see how long he remains out. So Chelsea are actually exploring and remain in talks with Rennes over Jeremy Jacquet. Now, he's 20 years old. Rennes value him for around £56 million. And I've been speaking about him in the last few months. Someone Manchester United are also monitoring as well. And some of the biggest clubs around Europe are all seeing how he develops in Liga. Now, Chelsea, Liam Rosenior knows him, of course, being at Strasbourg, playing against Rennes. Whether he is the right person to come into the team, we will see, because he still feels a little bit raw. Bournemouth, Marcos Senesi could be another option. He's out of contract in the summer. Chelsea also aware of that. But for now, it could look like Jacquet could be their number one target for this window.
Is this a bit of a problem area for Chelsea centre-backs, Jeff? Because they've signed so many, and I guess a lot of Chelsea fans would say the ones we've brought in are only maybe marginally better than what we've had before. They desperately need to find their partnership, don't they? The two that work going forward.
Yeah, it's difficult when, like you said, you've talked about, and they have brought in a good few centre-backs over the last couple of years, and whether it's not worked out or the players haven't been ready, but it seems like they want to find someone who's ready to go now. I think maybe it's a little bit of a punt, getting him. I think he's a 20-year-old. Is he ready to go straight in? Who knows? But I suppose Liam, who's managed in that league, has seen a lot more of him than me. Definitely in any way.
But that's interesting, isn't it, even that conversation? Because as we've been led to believe with Chelsea, it's, as you just mentioned, with bigger clubs, they sign the players, the head coach coaches them, but they would surely be in communication with Liam here, because he was so keen on him at Strasbourg, part of Blue Code, basically Chelsea.
Yeah, so like I said, he'll know all about him. And I'm sure he's saying yes or no if he thinks he can go straight in and improve Chelsea, because him selfishly as a manager, he wants all the best players in to help him do as well as he can this season.
Yeah.
What about, just looking at Liam there and wondering what conversation he has had with Raheem Sterling, Dan, because when he came in, he said it's basically a clean slate for everyone. There's no such thing as bomb squads under Liam Rosenior. He hasn't played for Chelsea since May 2024, was on loan at Arsenal last season. One goal in something like 29 appearances. That was against League One Bolton in the League Cup. What about his future? Could he move on this window? We know he's not going to walk away from a huge contract, is he, at Stamford Bridge?
No, absolutely. And what our colleagues in Sky Italy are reporting is that Napoli, of course led by former Chelsea manager Antonio Conte, are exploring a potential loan option for Sterling in this window. Now, we've also been reporting throughout this window that, from our understanding, Sterling would love to stay in London. And, Fulham, for example, would be a club he would be interested in joining. Now, we don't know from the other side whether Fulham would explore that deal because, as you mentioned, he'll be on quite extensive wages. And how will they negotiate that with Chelsea? As you mentioned, again, we're kind of talking about James Ward-Prowse. It's just incredibly sad for Raheem Sterling that over the last 2 years or so, he's just not played a whole of a lot of football. But you just think for a Premier League team especially, he would be a great signing. I mean, Napoli makes sense because there's so many former Premier League players there. You look at Rasmus Højlund, Kevin De Bruyne is injured at the moment, but Scott McTominay, Billy Gilmore. So it clearly seems a good safe haven for players who need a move.
Chelsea, Dan and Jeff, might argue that, all right, we've given Raheem Sterling opportunities to play football. We let him go on loan to Arsenal. We've offered him other loan deals, and perhaps, as you said, because he wants to stay in London, there are only a few clubs that would entertain that. Does it come down to where his motivation is right now? Because understandably, you're not going to walk away from figures that have been banded around £25 million left on his contract or a number near that. But he's 31, and it's now down to him to continue as a professional footballer or not, because he could easily just hang up his boots, couldn't he?
Yeah, it's quite ironic. I was around 31 when I finished. So.
Did you have £25 million worth?
No, I didn't. I wish. But no, I think for him it is, if he still has that hunger to go and play. I know he's saying he wants to stay in London, but there's not that many options for him what is there, Fulham, West Ham, pretty much who we can go to, and it depends if the clubs want you there or what they'll have to pay.
Can he still offer clubs like Fulham and West Ham something? And I mean, you say West Ham, that's a completely different challenge to Fulham, who are not in that scrap down the bottom.
Yeah, I think the main thing is whatever club he goes to, with how little he's played, he's not going to be ready to go straight into the starting team. So it has to be a club who will give him time, maybe a couple of weeks to come off the bench, train and get ready to play. But you look at his career, he's been a fantastic player and able to help any club he goes to.
I'm sure he must look at some of his former England teammates, Liverpool, Manchester City teammates, that look at, Jordan Henderson, James Milner, all these different players who've made other moves around the league, who are still playing at such a high level, who we hear from all of their managers talk so highly about what they bring to a changing room. I think Raheem Sterling, it just depends on his motivation at this point in his career, but there's no doubt he would offer so much experience, still so much to offer on a footballing sense as well.
Yeah. Right, let's talk about Manchester City, shall we? And the man behind us there, guys, Mark Guehi, who's put pen to paper. He believes that City is the perfect club for him to improve his game. The England defender signed a 5.5-year contract after completing a £20 million move from Crystal Palace.
I mean, first and foremost, it's such an honour, such a big club to come and play for this club. And I think for me, I've always just been obsessed with getting better and wanting to improve. That's something that I'm constantly striving for. And I think this is the perfect place for me to do that. The environment, I've heard so much about the club and the fans. The players speak for themselves, the manager, so it's definitely the right environment for me to improve and just get better.
I'm a top central defender. He's playing national team. Say on my personal name, thanks to the club, to bring him here. We come have the perfect age from many years and can play right, left, and him especially, because I know how it was wanted to choose us and bring him back for the problems that we have in the back in the next few months. So yeah, it's really, really important he's here. And I'm pretty sure if you have a more contract in Crystal Palace would have been impossible. But the fact that it's 6 months end of the contract, so the situation was easier in that terms. But of course, Crystal Palace and Man City have to be agree, and after the player decide to come. Otherwise, even in that situation, would not be possible.
So Pep's happy. Manchester City fans are happy. He had the choice of quite a few clubs, did Mark Guehi. Has he chosen the right one, Jeff? Why motivated by a move to the Etihad, do you think?
Look, it's a big club. They've been title contenders for years now. They're still in the Champions League, and we all know he was going to go to a big club with the options he had. I'm sure with how it went, nearly signing for Liverpool the last day in the summer, so he's probably had time to reflect and think what is the right club for me and the right move, and he seems happy. So yeah, like we said, no matter where he went, he was going to a big club. He was going to earn good money, but the excitement of working under Pep, maybe being at Man City.
Do you think that the 7-point gap, that he can help them claw that back? I mean, look, they're still in the FA Cup, they're still in the Champions League, there's still talk, albeit not much confident talk from City fans, of a treble.
Yeah, I think the main thing is the league and then try and challenge there. He can help them claw it back. It's going to be difficult. 7 points is a big gap. But yeah, I think he's going to go straight into the team and he will improve them.
I mean, it takes some pressure off just someone like Max Lane, who's come in, done a brilliant job at 20 years old, but having that experience that Mark Guehi brings in. I just wonder, Jeff, really quickly, will you be seeing, say, as his new Manchester City teammate? I admire just so much how he's handled the summer with the Liverpool move, but even his tribute video to Crystal Palace fans, then his first interview with Manchester City fans. Do you think if you're in that Manchester City change room, you're seeing some of this stuff, and how he's handled all of these different situations, thinking, we've got a good teammate here, I can't wait to kind of work with him. Is that something they'll be thinking about?
Yeah, possibly. I think with how he handled himself, like you said, in the summer, everyone was saying it was classy, he's carried on playing, it didn't look like it affected his performances. He's not come out and threw his thumbs out of the pram or anything. So he's gone about it in the right way. He knew deep down he was going to be getting his move, whether it was this January or the summer going into it. But it probably is, like I said, I possibly would have stayed till the summer, especially with the World Cup and all. But it probably is the right time for him to go to a top team, have 4 or 5 months under Pep, challenge for titles, and then going into the World Cup in good form.
And Dan, what about Crystal Palace? Because they've now got, a few weeks to find a replacement for Mark Guehi, and also, more pressingly, to keep hold of Jean-Philippe Mateta, because the Crystal Palace fans would be sick to the high teeth if they see him out the door at Selhurst.
Yeah, absolutely. And Oliver Glasner kind of brought it to everyone's attention last week when he said the club will entertain offers. If they get an offer that meets their evaluation for Jean-Philippe Mateta, and we've been reporting over the last 48 hours or so, Juventus are a club very interested in a potential loan with a conditional obligation for Mateta that could be activated in the summer. Now, whether they pursue him again, our colleagues in Italy also saying that Crystal Palace have rejected that approach from Juventus at this point, that would be a huge hammer blow. In terms of Mark Guehi and a potential replacement for him, though, I mean, you have to imagine the likes of Matt Hobbs, sporting director, they will have plans. I mean, in the summer, they pulled the plug on the Liverpool move because they didn't have a replacement in the works. But you feel like this time, with a few weeks left of the window, they absolutely will do. And I'd be incredibly surprised if they don't bring in someone before the deadline day.
Yeah. Right, stay with us. So much more to come on Good Morning Transfers. News from Arsenal, Nottingham Forest and Leeds on the way for you. Welcome back. Right, time for On This Day, and we're going back to 2023 when Noni Madueke signed for Chelsea for £29 million, signing a 7.5-year deal. But last summer his time at the Bridge came to an end and he joined Arsenal for an initial fee of £48.5 million. And let's stay talking about Arsenal, shall we? Because Dan Khan, their forward Gabriel Jesus, we're hearing, wants to extend his stay at the Emirates beyond his existing contract, which is due to expire, summer of 2027. He could almost be like a bit of a new signing for Arsenal, couldn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Having recovered from his injury in the last few weeks, I also think there's kind of two dynamics here. You know, he looks incredibly fit. Every time he puts on an Arsenal shirt at the moment, he looks a real threat. And I think there's also the polar opposite of Victor Gyökeres at the moment, not looking like he's firing on all cylinders. So I think for Jesus, I mean, we'll see what he wants to do with his future. I mean, would he, in the next 18 months, have a Paqueta situation where he wants to go back to Brazil eventually in his career? But at the moment, as we understand it, he wants to stay. But I also think from an Arsenal point of view, from a fan point of view, from people at the club, there's reason as well, because although they have Mikel Moreno, Gyökeres, Jesus and Kai Havertz, feels like one of those that isn't necessarily firing. So there's even more of a need to keep him at the club.
And he will be thinking, Jeff, World Cup. I've not played a lot of football, but I've got a great opportunity. Richarlison's injured. Igor Thiago, for some reason, isn't being selected for Brazil, even though he's only got Erling Haaland in front of him in terms of goals scored in the Premier League this season. Can Jesus help fire Arsenal towards that title and get ahead of his old club, Manchester City?
I think he can. It's a player I've always liked, going back from when he was at Man City. For me, it's just staying fit. I think that's been his biggest problem over the last few years, is staying fit and getting game time. I won't deny he's a great player, and I've played against him, and he's strong, he moves, he's good touch, and he can score a goal. So if they can keep him fit and get him playing, like you said, it will be like a new signing.
Yeah. Right, bit of transfer news just reaching us here on Good Morning Transfers, because Paris FC are among the clubs interested in Fulham centre-back Issa Diop, former West Ham defender, of course. Nothing formal at this stage, but Paris FC looking to spend on players not playing regularly enough in the Premier League. They also want, Dan Khan, Mathys Tel on loan from Tottenham. And that has been a move that's been talked about, well, certainly a move for Tel away from the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. He sees, playing for France at the World Cup one of his priorities now, and that probably thought was going to be a shoo-in when he made the move to London.
Absolutely. When he joined from Bayern Munich, I think he really felt like this was a stepping stone for his career, where he would play a lot of football, be a focal point. We've seen him play as a 9 on the left. But I think there's probably been growing frustration this season, especially in the last 48 hours, where he's been replaced in the Champions League squad. I alluded to that earlier this hour by Dominic Solanke, who's now fit. And so I think that's probably another frustration for him, where he's feeling like my chances are even more limited on a showcase stage like the Champions League. I'm playing even less football, so it must be incredibly frustrating for him.
Yeah, I think that's the most difficult part, is if you're out of the Champions League squad, how does that affect your confidence? And I always talk about in football, one of the biggest things is confidence and momentum of playing football. And if you're taken out of that, it's got to be a big blow for him, definitely.
And important to stress as well that Tottenham will not let players leave on loan, given the crisis, which we highlighted and showed you just how many that they've got in the treatment room at the moment. Very quickly, we've got to talk as well about Zinchenko. Nottingham Forest, loan ended. Where's his future?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting because Nottingham Forest are looking like they're trying to do a bit of business. I mean, Zinchenko looks like his loan will get cancelled at Nottingham Forest, and then he'll be on to the Eredivisie, with Ajax potentially interested in him. But also they're looking at a few strikers as well, which we'll tell you more about as well. Yeah,
and someone called Lorenzo Luca from Napoli, who is 6'7", which has got Sean Dyche written all over it, hasn't it? Jeff, thank you very much. Dan, great to see you. We'll be back at 12 o'clock. But coming up next, it's Fan Club, and it should be a quiet one because it's Jamie O'Hara in the studio. That is not worth missing. We'll see you again in a couple of hours.